All right, so if you would introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Katy Skelton. Well, let's see. Sorry, I know who I am. I'm Katy Skelton Acuff, and I own Katy Skelton.
All right, and what kinds of things do you do?
We make furniture and lighting here at Maven Makers.
All right, and have you always worked with designing and creating things like this?
I've been a furniture designer for 10 years. I've worked for other companies both as a freelance and in-house designer, and I started my own company 5 years ago. We've been making lighting for the last 18 months here in Savannah, and we've been with Maven Makers for the last year.
And did you know how to do this sort of thing, make your lighting fixtures before you came to the space, or?
Yes, so we're self-taught lighting designers and makers. We were doing this out of our house, and we ran out of space, and so that's whenever we got the space at Maven Makers.
All right, and if people were interested in doing something similar to you, what skills do they need, and what kind of lessons should they pick up before they try to jump into it?
I think background in design is definitely helpful. There are plenty of classes that most makerspaces offer as far as safety and how to use tooling. There isn't, I mean, it's mostly about being creative, so there aren't a lot of rules as far as what you need to know before you come into a makerspace. Well, that's not true. Coming into a makerspace, you need to know how to use tools and safely handle equipment, but as far as designing, that's something that for me is pretty self-taught, and that's it.
All right. And if you would perhaps explore what is and isn't a maker skill set, or who is a maker and who isn't.
Okay.
Who is there space for somebody who, say, is a painter or a poet or a musician in a makerspace like this one?
Like this one, I would say the kind of makers that would be the best fit for here are people who are doing woodworking or physically building something like we're doing lighting. If you are a painter, this might not be the best space because this is not a dust-free environment. Same goes for a poet or someone who isn't actively building something. But if you're into creating 3D things and you don't mind a little bit of dust, then this is the perfect space for you.
All right, and I usually ask people, are there things about what you do that people don't know about that you would like to talk about?
Specifically here in the makerspace?
In general, whatever you do.
Well, the main thing that we're focused on is making everything domestically in the United States. So I design everything, and then we partner with factories. So making things locally and in the States is important to me, along with working with socially responsible factories. So that means working with factories who offer fair wages and safety training equipment, health insurance, things like that. Which I think kind of goes hand in hand with the maker movement, because we're trying to get back to the roots of where products are made, and in doing that ourselves, we can control as much of that as possible.
And did you have to hunt down and garner those connections with factories and whatnot yourself, or was there a organization, or did the makerspace help in any way with some of that?
We had all of our manufacturers, well, with the exception of one actually. So we had most of our manufacturers before we moved into Maven Makers, but Ty did help us find a machinist who machines all of our parts locally for us. So that was a big help and resource in finding someone locally. But everyone else we basically researched and found ourselves.
Is there any advice you could give to somebody who may have to go down that same path? Any lessons that you
For
learned that you could
sourcing?
share? Yeah.
Probably trade shows are the best way to find people, and I would always go with someone that you have a personal recommendation from.
All right, and are you curious to find anything out as I go to other makerspaces down the line about how they do things and what's going on in those spaces? And if so, what kinds of things would you like to learn from further adventures?
Well, I think it's interesting to find out what kind of classes and equipment they offer. I was part of a makerspace in New York called Third Ward, and that ended up closing a couple years ago. But they had a lot of classes that were more digitally focused, so like Photoshop and things like that. And they had like a jewelry department. Like this makerspace, Maven Makers, is mainly focused on woodworking, and so I think it's interesting to find out what other Maven makerspaces offer as far as different disciplines.
All right. Is there anything else that I didn't ask but that you think I should have asked? That's usually like the catch-all phrase for anything more that needs to be said.
I don't think so.
Okay. That should be good.